Hi everyone, I just wanted to do a video today all about the back and talking about the muscles and explaining exactly where you're training and how each exercise is working different muscles. So the reason I wanted to explain this a little more in detail than just a normal back workout is because I think the back is a very important area to train in terms of your health. Firstly, it's going to improve your posture, and then secondly, it's an area that we don't actually use very much in a day-to-day life. Becoming more sedentary, most people don't train their back in any way, shape or form. If you think about it, back when we didn't have such evolved lifestyles, we had to climb for food, we had to do things that actually worked our back, but now that we've become more sedentary, doing back-related movements in day-to-day life is very rare. Like the most you do is reach up to grab something on a high shelf and bring it down, but you don't actually use any weight or resistance to try and train your back. Thirdly, the reason why I wanted to explain this properly is because it's very, very common for people to get injured when they're training their back if they're training it incorrectly, and I just wanted to make sure that I kind of break it down so that when you go to train your back, you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Another reason to train back from a purely aesthetic point of view is that it kind of widens out your back so that your waist appears smaller. So if you think about it, that if you're wanting to have a nice kind of tapered in waist, if you breadthen your shoulders and you widen through your lats, you can kind of taper in your waist or create an upside down triangle appearance. Yeah, so without further ado, let's get into the muscles, and I will show you exercises as I go along and try to explain both with my talking, with little pictures, and visually with the exercises as to what muscles we're working. So I'll start by talking about the main back muscles that you see on the superficial layer, so the layer that's closest to your skin, and then I'll go underneath and talk about more internal muscles and other muscles that are still important but aren't quite so big in the breadth of your back. Also in this video I'm not going to go into like your back of your shoulders or your arms or your neck. I'm going to leave that out. I'm just going to talk on the main trunk region. So let's start with the muscle up top, which is your trapezius. So this muscle is shaped on your body like this. It inserts up at the top of your neck, up into your head, comes down to the shoulders and back down into your thoracic spine. It just overhangs your lats, so they're on top, they're the most superficial back muscle on the top. Your trapezius has three sections, so there's upper, middle and bottom traps, and you know, most girls are afraid that when they start training they're going to get those big bulky shoulders, and you know, that's the muscle that men like to train, but you can train your traps so that you don't overdevelop this area, and it's absolutely fine. So with your traps, when you're trying to train them, you've got to be aware of what section you're working. If you want to stay away from overusing your top traps, then you just have to avoid things like a shoulder shrug, and then whenever you're doing any back movement, you've just got to make sure your scapula is in the right place and your shoulders are depreciated and they're down your back. So I'll just quickly show you. You don't want your shoulders to be up like this when you're training. You want them to be down your back and depreciated down. So you can see how if I'm in this position, it's really easy to use your traps in any type of movement, but if you're down and you're placed in and you're locked in that kind of position, it's a lot simpler. So some exercises for your traps would be something like anything like a row really works your traps, and also what I would like to do and show you is a face pull, because that really gets your lower traps. You can't train it wrong. It's the most important thing to not train wrong, because if you do, you're going to get headaches, and because of the fact that it inserts up into your head, if you take tension up into your top traps when you're trying to do lifting a heavier weight that perhaps your bigger muscles can take, but your upper traps can't take, you're going to end up with a headache. And I've seen this countless times, and it's all about performing the back movements with the right position and posture. Cool. Now let's go on to your lats, which is lower down on your body. So they are shaped kind of like that on your back. So lats actually insert in your humerus, which is your arm bone here, into your scapula, and then down into your lower thoracic spine, and it also kind of merges then into your fascia, thoracolumbar fascia down the bottom. So it is the biggest muscle on your back, and it's really important to train this muscle for both function and form. So I would perform something like a lat pull down or a pull up, and anything where your hand's going wider, you're going to make it easier to target your lats. If you go more narrow, you're going to find you're starting to go into another muscle, which is more like your teres major and minor. But it's still going to work your lats, but if you take your arms wider, it does force the most of the strength to go into your latissimus dorsi, or your lats. So with that in mind, we're going to go on to the next muscle now, and these muscles, well, this muscle's still seen on the superficial layer, but it kind of tucks in and underneath the superficial layers as well. So now we're going to go deeper into the back. We're going to go underneath those two major muscles, and we're going to start to talk about the internal muscles. So teres major and minor, these are muscles kind of placed here by your armpit, and they kind of wrap around, so they're on your back, but they're also coming around to your mid section as well, so they're more like here. This muscle will work with your lats and other muscles in your back. It's a bit smaller, and it does it's more, you can feel this muscle working with movements that are closer and narrower in. So like a good example to work this muscle group quite well is doing a straight arm lat pull down, which I'll show you. The next muscle that I want to talk about is your rhomboids. So your rhomboids look like this on your back. They kind of come down. There's a minor and major, and these muscles are very good for your posture. So I always train this muscle by doing anything like a row. So you can do a seated row, you can do a one arm single row, or you could do like a bent over row. And your rhomboids, again, they're underneath your trapezius muscle, and you really want to train not just the rowing action pulling, but actually protracting your scapula. And doing something like this, a scapular protraction, is a very good exercise. The start of your row is helping all of your posture. Another muscle that will be working is your serratus, but I'll talk about that later. So the next muscle I want to talk about is your erector spinae. Your erector spinae is down all of your back, and it kind of runs along your spine. It's very strong, and it's important to also exercise this muscle, and it's mostly done through things like a deadlift. The way I structure my exercises is to perform the most difficult exercises first, the movements that are more like a compound movement and require the most effort and energy. So usually I would do a deadlift at the beginning, a variation of a deadlift, and a variation of a pull up, chin up, things like that, because those ones really require a lot of energy and effort. And then I start to go into more any exercises for my back that are more for my posture and for stability and for just like the smaller muscles in your back that still need to be trained but don't require so much effort. The other thing I just wanted to touch on is the fact that when you do any back workout, if you're doing things that include a hip hinge, like a back extension or a deadlift, then you will be working your lower body as well. So it connects in, especially those hip hinge type movements. You're going to be working your hamstrings, your gluteals. So just be aware that when you include those types of movements, you should also warm up those muscles, because they're a new muscle that you haven't warmed up prior to doing them. Okay, now I'm just going to talk about a few of the muscles that are not directly on your back, but they kind of work from your back around your sides. So these are things like your serratus, and these are muscles they're called like a keyboard, and they're like placed here and they run around your back and down. So most of the work for a serratus movement is that. So when you're moving like that, that's the muscle that's kind of working. And also you have your external and internal obliques, so that's doing movements from side to side. So you have them overlapping each other and they both run in different ways. So doing movements for your sides is quite a good idea. Things like a wood chop, or you can do, like I usually train my obliques when I train my abs. So yeah, I don't worry about them too much when I'm just doing my back, but they are working as well. And then the next one I just wanted to talk about, these muscles are very deep and you wouldn't specifically train them, but they are often very tight, so you just have to be careful that you warm up. You do dynamic warm-ups at the beginning, and at the end you stretch these muscles. So the first one is your quadratus lumborum, and that muscle often is already very tight from being sedentary because your hip flexors are tight, then your QL becomes tight. So there is one specific stretch that I've been doing and it's really helped my QL, especially because it gets very tight if you do deadlifts and squats often, which I do. Another one, the psoas muscle. So this muscle you can stretch as well. It is quite a painful stretch. It feels quite awkward as well. I'll show you how to do that, but it's also very internal. Just like the QL, you actually both can't massage them from the hands, so you have to stretch them in the right way. As well, the psoas muscle is the only muscle that connects your top part of your body to your bottom, so it's quite an important muscle, and it's also very sensitive for your health. Like, there's a lot of research being done on your psoas muscle, how it affects your back pain and things like that, so giving that a good stretch at the end of your session will really help keep your mobility as well as keeping your strength. Hey guys, sorry the video cut out at the end of like 15 minutes, so there was just a few more things I wanted to say before we round this video up, and it is a different day, so yeah, I am still in the same clothing which has been washed but yeah, it's a different day. Anyway, so what I wanted to say is, when you're lifting weights, you've just got to be very careful that you're choosing the right weight for the right rep range. So make sure that it only is difficult on the last 1 to 3 and that you're not losing your technique. If you're losing your technique, it just means you're putting yourself at risk for injury, and as well you're not working the muscle that you are actually trying to work. So for example, if you start to fatigue in your lats, you'll round your shoulders and you'll start using your traps. So that's fine if you know, if you want to work your traps, but most likely that's not what you're wanting to do in that exercise. The next thing I wanted to just talk about is the importance of mind to muscle connection. So mind to muscle connection is all about actually feeling the muscle that you're working and kind of putting your thought on that muscle and feeling the contraction. So you really want to like know exactly where you're working and then use that kind of focus to feel the contraction. So you're not just going through the movements and you're not just kind of doing it quickly. You've got to keep the time under tension on your muscle a little longer than just, you know, doing the reps quickly and not thinking about the contraction. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. I hope that it has informed you somewhat of the muscles that you should be using, how you should be using them, and the kinds of exercises you can do for your back. If you have any more questions or want any more help with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. If you're living in Auckland, if you're not, then I can still help via messaging, but yeah, I do work as a personal trainer in Auckland, so I can do physical sessions here. Awesome, all the best with your working out, with everything else, and have a great day or night or whatever, whenever you're watching this. Thanks guys!